just gonna try to take you guys and gals on a trip. And it's a trip to Hanoi and back. Hanoi being North Vietnam. And how I ended up getting to Hanoi, and then more importantly, how I got back. Okay. If we look up here in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see River Rat Patch. That's the Red River Valley Fighter Pilots Association patch. And it was designed by the guys that were flying 100 missions over North Vietnam into Route Pack 6, which we'll talk about when we get later in the slides. But the thing is that organization is something that I hope some of our Britons might be interested in being part of. And anybody that's got wings, whether you're once upon a time was a loadmaster or whatever, whether it's a 130 or a C-17 or you flew something before, we've opened it up to any aircrew member to become a member of the River Valley Fighter Pilots Association. Down in the lower corner, you'll see the big four there. That's the 4th Allied POW wing. And you go, okay, well, explain that a little bit. Well, we had World War I, World War II, Korea, and then Vietnam. So we were the 4th wing. Those that got shot down during Desert Storm were not enough personnel to add up to become a wing, so they were a squad. But neither here nor there. And of course, I like the flag. Next slide, please. Anybody recognize that right there? 433rd Attack Pilot Squadron, Upon, Thailand. Later on to be the F-15 Weapons School at Nellis Air Force Base. Upper left is the 8th Attack Fighter Wing now at Korea. Wolfpack is a specific fast fact. When I say fast fact, we flew the F-4. Our primary job was get into high threat areas, locate, find targets, mark the targets, and then put strike flights to destroy those targets. Most of the time, we're spending 3.5 to 5 hours in the target area, hitting the tanker 3 to 5 times. So that's where I ended up getting quite a bit of flying time, and then any combat time. Down at the bottom, those are 200 missions flying a Wolf, both front seat and back seat. Next slide, please. Now the Eagle looks pretty nice from that view. But Old Smoky, during its day, was a kick-ass machine, okay? And if you were standing anywhere near that, your hair would be slicked all the way back with the blast of that jet. So you take a hit, keep on ticking. It brought me home 6 times, and the 7th time I had to leave it in North Vietnam. Next slide, please. Anybody know who the guy on the left is there? The smile and the blue scarf? Anybody out there recognize that person? I got one hand, go ahead. Robin Olds, that's right. The world's greatest fighter pilot, okay? I'm the 2nd world's greatest fighter pilot. But Robin and I are there standing at McConnell. I went to Buckley to pick him up. He's retired, came down from Big Boat Springs. And I landed landed and taxied in and shut down and went in to get Robin. And says, "Are you ready to go?" He was going to be a guest speaker at a dining in thing for our enlisted folks. He says, "Yes, sir, I'm ready to go." We stick his stuff in the travel pod. He starts to walk towards that second ladder. There's really 2 ladders you can go up. And I said, "Sir, get your ass in the front seat." And he had flown the F4 for many years. But it's like riding a bicycle. Right slack. Just, even an old 80-year-old guy can get an eagle and still kind of know how to fly it a little bit, okay? Not greatly, but. So I got Robin up front. Boy, he had the biggest grin. That's a grin after landing, but he was tickled pink. And we blasted out. As we're coming back into McConnell, we go right through our airspace, and I had a flight of 4 Air Force waiting to jump us on the way back. And so I'm back here in the back seat running the radar, and I said, "Sir, I got radar contacts. Their flight of 4 looks like they're split, 2 to the left, 2 to the right. They're 20 miles out. Let's take the far right-hand side and we'll sweep through." Roger that. Boy, he cranks. I says, "Okay, 10 miles. That'll be 15 high at 10 o'clock. Tally 2, tally 4. And he takes the airplane and starts to really crank it. That's the travel pod with its nest dress in it, okay? And it's a 4G travel pod. And I said, "Sir, unless you want to leave your mess dress in western Kansas, we better back off the Jeep just a little bit." So after we run the intercept, they join up on us and they escort us down to Mitchell. And then the fire trucks wait to hose us down. And that airplane, it's got 2 kills on it. And then the 781, the 2 kills are Robin Gold's kills. That airplane, he was really tickled pink. Next slide, please. I mentioned maybe the 194th about, or maybe I was at the Spooks folks about Operation Bolo. For a while, when Robin first got there, we were losing a lot of F-105s. In fact, we lost over half of our 105 fleet over North Vietnam. A lot of it came from B-21s coming in high altitude over the top, slicing down, supersonic, rolling in behind the strike light, which might be 16 105s escorted by at least 8 or not more F-4s. But as they came in, the intent was to get the thugs to turn. And the thug with 12 750-pound bombs turns like a Mack truck. It just don't turn at all. It's kind of just a big sweeping thing. And so for the thug to survive, he's going to have to punch off the 750s, which means those 750s didn't make it to the target area to kill a railroad or kill an airfield or to kill a bridge. So the MiGs did their job. They got the bombers to jettison ordnance. Well, this really made Robin mad when he found out that they'd been doing this. So he got with a guy called J.B. Stone, and J.B. Stone was a patch wearer. That's a Final Weapons School, a PhD course in F-4s, tactics. And he says, "JB, I want you to come up with a plan of how we can defeat the MiGs." And the plan was to take F-4s from Karat, Ubon, Udorn, and Da Nang, and all rendezvous together like 16 F-105s, outriggered by 8 and 8 F4s. So we had a big package. And the thing was that the F4s were using 105 call signs. They were squawking 105 squawks. They were flying 105 routes, and they were flying 105 airspeeds. So on GC High that the North Vietnamese had, when they saw this, it was, here comes a bunch of 105s escorted by F4s. Well, guess what? We were armed BVR, which means beyond visual range. No other U.S. Air Force or Navy airplane was in front of us. And within a matter of a minute, and I think 16 seconds, they dropped 7 MiGs that fast. Most of them were AIM-7 shots. A couple of turned into AIM-9 shots. It was 1/3 of the North Vietnamese MiG-21 fleet. I was thinking outside the box. That's coming up with a plan to spoof the enemy. Okay? And it was very effective. And the North Vietnamese then stopped sending MiGs down until they got more comfortable with what was going on in the area. Next slide, please. This picture is in the 433rd at Nellis. That's the second greatest fighter pilot in the world. And if you walk in, it's right across from the duty desk up on the left. And short fingers scratched on it with a black magic marker. The most important thing about that is your first squadron, especially a combat squadron, is the world's greatest thing. You'll always love it. You all should be engrossed in the love of 144th, 194th, and everything that this wing does. Next slide, please. Well, this forward air control, I told you, we were F4 guys. We took over from the Misties, which were flying F-100s out of Phuket in South Vietnam. And that initial squadron was run by a good friend of ours, Bud Dave. And I'll mention Bud later. But they came to Ubon in their 100 F2 seat models and checked us out flying the mighty F4 for the world. And the bottom line is up there is who are we going to send? You're going to send me. I'm going to go kill you. Next slide, please. Let's see if I can make this thing work. Move on. Let me find the DMZ. There's the DMZ. The bomb's down here in Thailand. Udorn is up here in Thailand. That is there. I got shot down right in this area. That distance is a pretty long haul, so it always took us tankers in and tankers out to make it. And we've had cases where a thud had taken a hit over Hanoi and he was leaking fuel. And he got on guard and was screaming that he needed gas now. And there was a tanker down here orbiting, and I think it's a yellow tanker. He heard that thud talking, and the pilot and the co-pilot turned the airplane north and started going. And they get a hold of AVCCC, the 130 Command and Control Emergency System. Hey, this is yellow 39 or whatever, it didn't make any difference. We're proceeding north for the 105 was refueling. And they come back, no stand by. You're not authorized. And that 135 crew goes, copy, we're cleared north. And again, loud clear coming over the radios, no, stay by, you're not authorized to maintain your anchor. Copy that, we're cleared to the north, we're switching freaks. Well, they picked up that thud, and as he rejoined on the tanker, just the boom into the airplane. Engines unwound. The flamed out. They had to lock on, grab a hold of him, and started down, and they were dragging that thud downhill, pumping gas in him to get his motor started so he could get him back home. That 135 crew got the Silver Star for saving that air crew during that thud. And had they not disregarded the words that they were given, that another guy in Hanoi or dead. So sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. You need to do what's right. And those guys did. Next slide, please. Okay. I'm going to talk about Duke quite a bit today, John Wayne. A lot of us will find that we're going to get scared. And when you go to that third island chain and there's stuff going on and you guys are up in the air and you're trading sticks, you're going to get scared. But being scared is all right, because you're going to saddle up anyway, you're going to go. Okay? Fear is part of that, but don't let it overcome you. On the day that I was shot down, the 16th of February 1972, there were, up here to the north, we had about 5 130 millimeter North Vietnamese artillery pieces firing across the DMZ River at our fire bases on the south. And our job was to go find those, put 2,000-pound LTP bombs on top of those gun positions, and thus protect our Army and our Marine and Army fire bases to the south of the DMZ. Intelligence. Sometimes that word intelligence is a misnomer. Because when they briefed us on this mission early in the morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning, they said the only thing in the target area is maybe some 2380, 37, maybe possibly 57 millimeter guns. None of us radar ignited. And I reach into my blazer pocket, pull out this red flag, and it's got BS written on it. I just wave that thing. Intel goes, "What's the matter back here?" I says, "I got pictures of 3 SAM sites, so they're just north of the DMZ, and you're telling me that the only thing we got is 37 and 57. And he goes, "Well, and he starts spitting and sputtering and whatever. And I says, "We need to be prepared. Do we have any assets, 105 assets, Wild Weasel assets?" "No." "Do we got any SAR assets close?" "Well, they're at the NAG, and we're setting water." Or NKP, that's quite a ways away. So when Ralph and I, that's my back seat here, we get up there early in the morning, just as the sun's coming up. And so we're meandering around looking, and we find the 600 millimeter gun sights. And I've got 2 flights of 4 from the 433rd with 2,000 pounders, LGBs on board, stacked up at 20 and 25,000 feet. I said, I'm going to put down the mark on the first 130. As soon as you hit it, I'll mark the second one. And as we did that, we blew up one, blew up the second one. And as I'm orbiting to the north of the DMC where they're dropping their bombs, I'm well inside North Vietnam. I look out the window, and this is very black stuff with red in the middle of it. And those are airbursts of 85 millimeter AAA. And they're dancing all around close to my airplane. When I look out, right there in the center, not depicted where my smoke went, but there in the center, was a fire can radar guidance for the guns. And the only thing that was saving my airplane from getting blown out of the sky was the fact that we had a pod on board to jam the guidance and the ranging for that AAA tank. So I tell the guys, I says, all right, we're going to change targets here real quick. I've got 5 85 millimeters of fire kind radar, and so we're going to strike. And the wind comes off the beach like this and goes that direction. So, and rather than sitting in a circle like that was drawn, it's basically like my hand with my center of my palm being the radar fire control system, and at each finger is a trench to the gun, okay? And I says, we're going to start to the guy farthest to the southwest, and we're going to work to the north. So the smoke always blows to the south, so it doesn't interfere with you identifying the next gun position and or cause the laser any problems. Right? So we take 6 bombs and actually kill the fire can and the 5 guns. Now the only thing that's really amazing, that's a Willie Peters 2.75 rocket that has a white phosphorus smoke on it that used to mark the targets. And so when I marked the fire can, I says, hit my smoke before I even fired. The Willie Pete went into the fire can and started the damn thing on fire, okay? So we finished him off with a 2,000 pounder just to ensure that we killed him. And we probably got about 85 KIA out of that. Not shabby for a country boy. Thanks, ladies. Like I said, I had pictures of SAM sites. This is what an SA-2 fire hands-on radar looks like. Next line. That's a classic, almost Star of David type Soviet design. Each one of those spots would be a missile with the fire or the radar guidance, the hands-on radar, and everything there in the center. Next slide. Those are telephone poles. They go up to about Mach 3. Next line. Yeah, this is a pretty good depiction. I tried to explain it to you guys, the squadron, yesterday. But after we killed the 85 millimeters, we were getting ready to go back and take out the rest of the 130 in position, because that was our primary mission. And I come under attack by Quad 23, 2 of them. And that's like taking a fire hose and pointing it at you, and it's a solid stream of lead. And it was pointed directly at my airplane. And so I told the guys again, I said, all right, we're going to have to change targets again. I'm going to put down 2 more marks, and I'll mark both of those 23s. And the 23s were guarding a command control center, warehouse area. And I says, you're gonna do some serious killing here because all the bad guys are inside that command and control area. Well, as soon as we killed them, the next thing happened is I get an indication in my F4 that there's a SAM trying to lock onto me from to the north. I go, okay. Obviously, my pictures are correct. There are SAM sites in the area. As I go beaming up the road, and they were about at a spot, I'm going to say 7, 14, and maybe 20 clicks north. That's where it was spaced. And as I'm doing about 600 knots, which is pretty fast, jinking and weaving, and we're down about maybe 200 or 300 feet below the ground because of that sand that kind of tried to lock onto me. And as we roll up, the first SAM site was just like that Star of David I showed you, but nobody was there. It was empty. That's good news. As we rolled back up and went back to the right, I looked, and we get a launch indication, which says they just launched a missile. We look out the window, and there's, oh shit, there's 2 of them coming. And they bracketed left and right of my airplane. I mean, you could I could have written short finger on the side of the missile that close. The only thing that saved me at that instance was that the rocket boosters were still on. And until the rocket booster drops on, the missile is ballistic. It's not receiving any guidance, okay? So I had basically jammed him, mid-range him. So he wasn't a threat to me. I knew that. He found out that he couldn't do squat with me. The guy to the south of me I knew was empty. Left only one SAM site that I knew about, which was to the north. Another 7 clicks. So I decided I'd spin over the top of this guy. And initially I was going to call the 433rd, my laser guys, come down and bomb this damn thing. But I realized in trying to do that, they would have to come in at altitude, which would then give SM the opportunity to shoot at them. So that wasn't a good plan. And then I decided I've got 2 AIM-7 Sparrows and 7 Willie Pete's left, those white phosphorus rockets. And my thought was, I'm going to come around, I'm going to have Ralph put the radar foresight, I'm going to have him put the aspect switch with beam. We're going to lock onto the ground. And we're going to ride that beam to where my pipper is sitting, which is the radar man itself. And I've got an expanding rod AIM-7 going to blow up. Rocket fuel in the SAMs themselves with the Willie Pete's would all get fired. It'd be a hellacious bonfire. And I'd go out supersonic off to the beach, which is about 5 miles just to the west, to the east. I was going 1,000 miles an hour. That's what I wanted to do. Fortunately, next slide. That's what happened. Ralph, my backseater, said the word SAM. We had launch indication. Nothing to the south. This guy, we're over the top of it, is not launching. That means the only other guy launching is the one 7 clicks to the north. So I turned my head left to look north. Ralph had failed to say SAM right 5 o'clock. If in fact he had, we could have Logan and probably defeated that Sam and survived. This Sam, that flat, we just broke down. We'll get it. The next slide is going to show this. The very first optically guided SA2. It's called an SA2F. And up here is the TV camera that they use to track and guide the missile. This site was manned by Russians with North Vietnamese looking over the shoulder. The site was just to the southwest of where the site that I was over the top of. And it was too secret for us to know about. Okay? So the word intelligence comes again, lacking. The guys down at 7th Air Force at Saigon were inside the green door of the skiff and were listening to the Soviets talk about how they're going to blow short fingers ass out of the sky. And it was too secret for me to know. And we had zero wild weasel support that day. So no missiles coming from friendly 105s to strike that SAM site. Next slide. That's kind of what the area looks like. We were about right in here. So if you look at that, that's the beach. Back of this side is High Parks. Both are safe places to go. Unfortunately, Short Finger's airplane is doing this. And I tried in west and tried to wheel IF-4 either west to the High Park, preferably to the east to the beach to get feet wet. So there's only one place it was going, and it was in a flat spin, it was going down. So we stepped out. Next slide. Yeah. Ralph and I are the first two guys shot down 16 February. 17 February, still too secret to know about that SAM site. We lost a thud weasel. They finally had a weasel support up. Fortunately, they didn't do any good. And a record is supposed to take pictures of killing that SAM site, which nobody could know about. So we had 3 airplanes down, 6 crew members down, 5 in Hanoi, 1 KIA, because it was too secret for the air crews to know that that SAM site was there. Next slide. Okay. That's kind of how we got from A to B. The code of conduct, everybody's familiar with it. We've learned it in all of your stuff, and you go over it a lot. The only area that I want to talk about is down here. One question, prisoner of war. Name, rank, service number, and date of birth. I will evade answering questions to the utmost of my ability, and I'll make no oral or written statements disloyal to my country, its allies, or harmful to their cause. Well, the North Vietnamese had a way of making that obsolete. And it cost guys a lot of pain. And we'll see some slides about that. But in the latter part of the 67, 68 time frame, the CAG, Admiral Stockdale, and Robbie Reisner, the Air Force senior ranking officer at the time, had put out a change to the code of conduct. And the only thing that we've changed, all that's still good. But they added, when fear of loss of life or loss of limb, you may say something to get you out of that predicament. We're going to show you what those predicaments look like, and you'll understand why it's important that we were given that authority. Once we got out of whatever predicament we were in, we went right back to name, rank, service number, date of birth, until we were tortured, beaten to the point of fear of loss of life or loss of limb, and then we would break and give again. It always bounced back. You'll find that 591 guys were defiant. And there's an excellent book called The Defiant, the Alcatraz 11. And if you want to read that book, it's on Google and Amazon and stuff, things like that. Here, we started texting in 1965. Well before the iPhone and the Blackberries and stuff like that. But if you take a look at, we did A, B, C, D, and E, and then down. We took the K out so we could make it 5 by 5. So an A is a, B is, and we're doing that through concrete walls. And the old guys, having been there for 5, 6 years, when I got there, 7 years, we're texting like this. I mean, it's like chickens picking on corn on the field, you know what I mean, the chicken coop. I mean, they're just picking away 1,000 miles an hour. And I remember the first time I tried to text them, I go, R, U, let's see, R, where in the hell are, okay. R is 42, so I go 42. U, let's see, that's 45. Okay, well, I gotta go up to 3 and 4, and K, we don't have a K, so I'll use the C. Are you okay? And I get back this, I just started pounding on the wall. And I says, guys, I'm sorry. I have no clue what you're doing. Now, communication is critical. I'll try to talk about that a little bit. Once we had line of sight, line of sight could be clear back here in the corner, A, B, C. We could spell out words. We generally left the vowels out, just use the consonants. And you can talk pretty fast that way. And you're using your visual receptors, which are faster than your ears, to take a quadratic and turn that into a letter, turn it into a sentence, okay? So we could talk faster if we had line of sight. Now we use this tap code in all different kinds of forms. Coughing and spitting and sneezing, because everybody, allergies were terrible up there, okay? So if we could cough and spit, we could be moving our finger up and down underneath the door and typing. We don't have to go through the concrete. But it was very effective. And the North Vietnamese knew that we were communicating, but they never figured out what we were getting across, okay? And communications was critical. Critical to our existence and our survival. And you guys here in the 144th know that communications is critical in everything that you do. If we're not communicating properly, then we're not getting the mission done, we're not getting the job done. We need to be able to ensure everybody's on the same page, going the same way, same day. Next slide. Well, this is what the North Vietnamese used against the code of conduct. And initially, I want to. In this instance, they take a rope, and of course the guys are short sleeved 90% of the time. Take a rope and put their boot on your biceps and cinch it till your elbows come together. Okay? And then, as you can see, they lift it up over and run the rope through a bar with clevises that your ankles are setting. And it's about a 25-pound bar. It's a big deal, but it's heavy. And then they stand on your shoulders and just cinch you up until you're looking where the sun comes out. That's pretty painful. Short finger got a new addition. My hands were like this. They brought them up between my shoulder blades, then run the rope through my biceps, then put their feet on my shoulders, and then brought my elbows together. Okay? That's pretty hard to get from A to B, pretty obvious. And I wasn't really muscular, but nowadays, our airmen and aircrew members, they're pumping iron and everything all the time. The North Vietnamese could guarantee that they can make those elbows touch. And they ended up with your hand sitting up here at the back of your head. Well, guess what happens? Both shoulders are going to give. Whether it pops out, right one did, like this. So that took some of the slack off. This one partial, but pretty damn painful. And then when they tie you off, the only thing that was saving grace to me is my head was turned to the left. So when I went down between my legs, my jaw was on that 25-pound bar. And it stopped me from going farther. And this guy called the Bug, he's a torture expert. He's, I think I'll do that. All right, so hopefully you hear me again. The Bug was a torture interrogator. And Straps and Bars was the guy here on my right. And he's about a 6 foot early Vietnamese soul. And he's a classic like this. You move the switch to torture, it does 100% exactly the way it's supposed to. You say, bring him water, he'll bring the water. But he's on that switch. Well, the Bug, they knew early on that I was in the laser squadron, even though I had told him that I knew nothing about laser-guided bombs. In fact, when Ralph and I got shot down, I told him, I said, the thing is, we're on our very first sortie. We're brand new into the theater. We're on a training mission. We got lost and ended up getting in the wrong spot at the wrong time and got our ass shot down. Don't know squat. Ralph says, okay, that's what we're saying with. Well, the initial portions of my interrogations were about lasers. I don't know anything about it. They didn't open up Aviation Week and put it in front of me, and they're pointing and reading stuff about Aviation Week. So I don't know anything about it. Well, on the 10th of May, 1972, Bob Watts and Roger Walker, Steve Ritchie, and Chuck de Bellevue, John Markle, was in Fort War number 3, I can't remember, I think it's Pickering. Yeah, Pickering. And they're back shooters. They were coming in to block Bigs coming from the northwest of Hanoi because the 433rd, with their laser gun bombs, D.L. Smith leading it, a weapons school we had, was to drop the Newport Bridge. From 1964 to 1972, May 10th, the Newport Bridge had never been dropped, a span had never been dropped. Hundreds of thousands of billions of tons of bombs had been around it, but the bridge never went down. DL in 2 places, 4, 8 airplanes dropped the damn bridge just like that. That night, the North Vietnamese came and says, "Sharp anchor, long close," and then we go through this routine. And the reason they did that is they had a copy of my flying records from Dubon. Now, how in the hell they got up there, I don't know, but, you know, it could have been a hooch guy that was cleaning the deal, was paid extra bucks to take a picture or whatever. But they knew I had, on my second combat tour, I had 18,000 hours of combat time, 350 missions, They knew all that. And so they were asking this question about lasers. The bug goes, "Tell me about lasers." And I said, "I don't." And as soon as I got the word "don't" out, Straps and Bars, which is standing here to the right, with an AK-47, takes the rifle butt and sticks it in my ear. And over here on this side is a wall that's about 6 foot tall with jagged rock. And so as I go flying to the left into the rock, a rock enters the right ear, or the left ear. And I go down into a withering pile of short finger, going, "Well, that's pretty fun." Buck asks me again, "You sent me about the laser bomb." I go, "I don't." And that's when Straps and Bars puts me in that spot. And my jaw is down against the bar. The Bug asked me again, he says, "You must tell me about the laser." And I go, "I can hardly breathe. My gun is in my throat. The bar's on my jaw. But maybe I know something." Well, eventually we got out of that spot and we went through days upon days upon days. He shoveled sand where the sun don't shine to the North Vietnamese about lasers. The bottom line is always be defiant. Don't submit. Even if things go wrong, there's a way out. You can make it happen. Next slide. Anybody know who that is? Jeremiah Denton, Admiral Denton, Senator Denton. When this picture came out, he was beaten and tortured to meet with the press. And he finally says, "Okay." So he's out sitting on a stool in front of the press, and there's Japanese and everybody around taking pictures. And there was a film crew, and they were filming it. And when the film got back to the Pentagon, they go, "What's the matter with his eyes?" Because he was blinking a lot. And they go, "Well, they're not red, so it's not allergies, there's no tearing. What's the problem?" And there was a young airman in the Photoshop at the Pentagon and says, "He's blinking Morse code torture." And that's the first time we had any real confirmed intel, the fact that our guys were being tortured by the North Vietnamese. And it was thankfully to Admiral Denton and that young airman that figured out why he was winking. Next slide. The CAG, Admiral Stockdale. Talk about American hero. Medal of Honor winner. The CAG had been, again, beaten and tortured to meet with the press and everything. He kept denying, boy, they really worked him over pretty bad. And he finally got to the point, okay, I'll submit. So they sent him back to his cell to clean up, get the blood and stuff off his face and stuff, so that when they presented him to the press, it would be more appropriate, okay? Well, what the CAG did, he had a stool in his cell, and he took that stool and he started banging it on his face, on his head. And he kept banging it and banging it and banging it. And then he said, maybe that's not enough, so he did it on the concrete wall. When the numbers come in to take him out to meet with the press, he was a bloody pulp. He won. He didn't meet the press. He paid the price. He was defiant. Another instance, Medal of Honor instance. CAG, same scenario. When we get him out, the CAG had stashed an old rusty razor blade in the corner of his cell. And after being beaten and tortured, they sent him back to get cleaned up. He reached to the razor blade and sliced both wrists. And he said, I would prefer to die for my country than to give in to the enemy. When the North Vietnamese came in to take him to see the press, his lying in a pool of blood. Defiant. Where do we find men like him? Who out there would volunteer to slice your wrists rather than say, oh yeah, the United States is wrong. You folks here in North Vietnam are the best people in the world. Medal of Honor. Next slide. This is one of my favorites, Pokalani. He was asked again and beaten and tortured. It's all the same scenario to come out and press. And a Slight magazine was there. And the intent was to show a American prisoner of war. Well, Paul gave the double digit to the cameraman when he took the picture for the Life magazine. Well, by the time that picture got back to the States and they saw that, they said, we can't show that, so they airbrushed it out. The word got back to the North Vietnamese that Pokalani was given the double finger to the North Vietnamese, and he got beaten and tortured again. Next slide. The Beach Stratton. This guy's unbelievable. Shot himself down with a Zuni rocket, spotted his engines. It had a wing that went off and spotted him. He ended up shooting himself down. Anyway, he's come out And he sat in front of the press, and he's just done like this, and he rotates 90 degrees and continues to do it. He just keeps going round and round, bowing. And somebody in the back of the press goes, "You have brainwashed your POWs." Oh my God, the North Vietnamese went berserk. And they drug the beat. And if you look at his nose, you'll understand why we call him the beat. But he was defiant. He didn't give in. He found a way to counter the threat. Okay? Are you out there? Can you do that? Didn't take much. You're going to pay the price later. But you sure as hell didn't give them the opportunity to make you look like a fool. Next slide, please. This is one of the greatest stories. Seaman Hagel is a postal clerk on a frigate. And how does a postal clerk on a frigate in the Gulf of Tonkin end up in Hanoi? He's out on the Fantail, smoking. And they open up the big guns for a fire barrage, and it startles him, and he falls overboard. And they ends up floating towards the beach, and he gets captured. First by fishermen that take him, and then they drag him to Hanoi. And Hagel has zero propaganda use, zero intelligence. He had free reign of the camp, and his job was sweeping the floors and stuff, the concrete courtyards, dirt courtyards. But we use him to communicate with his broom. Sweep, 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 tap go, right? Sweep, sweep. Between rooms. Pretty ingenious. Or Vietnamese didn't know that was going on. The other thing that happened is Hagel learned 250 names. Everybody was tasked to learn. Everybody in the camp. In the system, so that if somebody got out for whatever reason, we could ensure that we had the names. Okay? Hagel learned 250 names to Old MacDonald is on my farm, E-I-E-I-O, and then a name, and then a name, and then back to the E-I-Os and a name. So he was ordered by the B and the CAG, Admiral Stockdale, to take early release at the first opportunity. And early release was for both. It's first in, first out. Hagel was way down the line. But he had 250 names right here. And we needed to get those names out. So he was ordered to take early release. When he got to the Pentagon, and they're debriefing him, he's doing Old MacDonald, and they can't write fast enough to keep up with the song, get the names. So they ended up taking it and then playing it back slow, so they got 250 names. Names of guys that we didn't know were alive. He ended up teaching at the Navy survival school. Next slide. One day, another Medal of Honor, probably the most decorated Air Force officer to date. An American hero, a great man, a friend. But was shot down almost exactly the same spot on the same type of mission that I was on. He was shot down in 66, I guess. So 6-7 years later, here I come. He was a F-100 F model fastbacking. Got hit by, I think, maybe it was AAA. Anyway, they punched out. When he come out, he hit his forehead on the canopy bow, knocked himself silly. His right wing was underneath the canopy bow when he went out of the chair, out of the airplane, broke his arm. And then when he hit the ground, I think the seat ejection broke his back. Most everybody that jumped out of 100s and early F4s and 105s early on always had broken backs. Not that it was limiting that you could walk, but you were backward. Anyway, Bud gets captured relatively quick, and it just so happens that it is at 10, which is when I was shot down, 16 February. 10, Ash Wednesday, 1972. Kind of basic. Bud is put in this area, kind of a hut, and he's being guarded. And after a couple of days, he notices at night that the guard goes to sleep. I'll check this out 2 more days to see if he maintains that same standard. Sure as hell, every night, the guard goes to sleep. But it says, what's this? He's dragging a leg, got a broken arm. He's going to march 12 miles south of the DMV. Okay? It takes him, I think, 10 days. I'm not sure. I have to refresh my memory on that. But it takes him a while, and he's dehydrated. Hasn't had really anything to eat other than maybe a berry and a twig or something. But he made it to the DMZ. And what he sees on the other side is helicopters. The bus says, I made it. I'm rescued. Unfortunately, the helicopters were doing this. They were taking guys out of the fire bases because the North Vietnamese Tet offensive was in front of them. And they were overrunning those fire bases. So Bud walks into Regiment Battalion, I don't figure a bunch of them North Vietnamese regulars, right? Boy, he went from a high to a rescue to oh shit. He did a 90 right and started dragging and trying to run. Got shot in the ass, recaptured for his efforts. He was awarded the death penalty. It's like this. For those that know, this is one of the greatest fighter pilots in the world. He's a dear friend of mine. And Robbie was the squadron commander in Korea, Line 105. And just before he deployed to, I think, Top Lady in the Thud, Time Magazine came out with this deal about the superhero squadron commander. Oh my yards. Well, Robbie got shot down twice. He was shot down in September, March of '67, and then again in September of '67. In the March when he made it to past the beach to the water, he was awarded the Air Force Cross for the mission that he flew that destroyed tanker carriers. And he was leading an acid strike on the pipes in the On the 16th, or in September, he wasn't quite as lucky. He was captured. He won the Air Force Cross again. 2 Air Force Crosses. 2 Air Force Crosses. Second highest to the Medal of Honor. Robbie was the senior ranking Air Force officer at the time. When the North Vietnamese saw this, and they saw Robbie, they said they had the perfect propaganda tool. They would use this hero to their benefit. And they called us pearls sometimes. They could trade pearls for various things. But Robbie wouldn't have anything to do with it. And let's see, between the stand there and the stand here, maybe the flag. Yeah, about that. And about from the wall here, that rectangle that I just marked was his cell. Walls were painted black, no light in it. The windows were covered and sealed. The crack underneath the door was sealed, no light. Robbie spent 4 years in solitary confinement in that box. Now, how did Robbie do that? How would, you know what it'd be like if you went to the bathroom and you forgot your cell phone and you go, damn, I need to call somebody right away. And you get really antsy, you get up off the toilet. Well, Robbie didn't have that opportunity. I mean, he's there in that cell, day in, day out, 24 hours a day, 365 for 4 years. The only time he come out is when he emptied his bucket. How did Robbie survive? Communications. Communications were critical, and they're critical today in the 144. It's imperative that we talk and understand what everybody is dealing with. How am I doing? I'm going over on shit. That's all right. The other thing is trust and faith in your fellow prisoner of war. Now that applies today here at the 144. You've got to trust your own airmen, your own officer corps. You've got to everybody trust each other to get the job done, to get the mission done, to ensure that we send missiles downrange that kill people. That's the bottom line. Robbie was also a very strong man of faith. And faith is critical. I don't care what religion you have, or you may not even have a religion. You may not even believe in the higher being. That's beside the point. But when things get down to where it's you and nobody else, you're going to end up sometime looking up and saying, hey, I need help. I really need some help. Help me get through this. Help me make it through the next torture session. Help me to stay here another 5 years. Help me. And all you got to do is ask him. That's all you got to do. Just ask him for help. And he'll give you the grace, the strength, the courage, the faith that you need to solve that problem that you're dealing with, okay? It's not fun. He's not gonna pick you up by the collar and drag you out and send you back to home to the stage of your life as an answer. Okay? But he's gonna allow you the courage and the strength and the time to be able to be defiant, to survive, so you'll learn to be able to fight another day. Next slide, please. Well, that's what I look like when I come home. Next slide. That picture there on the wall, if you go to the Nixon Library in Yorba Linda, it's on the main wall as you walk in and go towards one of the displays. It covers the entire wall. It's our picture. I don't know why I picked us, but I guess we all had pretty big smiles. Next slide, please. Operation Homecoming was a tremendous event. Everybody welcomed us home. The sad thing is, those before us, the guys from 68 through 73, didn't get the welcome home that they deserved. They really took it on the chin. People like Jane sped on. A lot of people disrespected them. Nowadays, I think we've earned the respect of our nation. And when you deploy and you're at the airport, and if you're in uniform, you'll probably get thank you for your service. Next slide, please. Well, that's what it looked like when we come home. My wife, we've been married for 3 years, and I spent there 3 years in country. A year in first tour, a year in second tour, and then another year in the jailhouse. American Airlines was very kind. I flew with them for 17 years. I had a big U-Haul for us. Next slide. Here on the left is President Nixon hosted the largest ever, will probably repeat that sometime. It's against the West Wing all new to them. But the largest ever dinner held at the White House was for us. And I'll tell you the story. I told you I was going to mention John Wayne. When I was shot down, I always carried 4 hand grenades. I had 2 on my chest belt on my harness, 2 on my gun belt, leaded hollow points in my pistol. Because 90% of my sorties were fought in Laos, and Laos was not taking prisoners. And if you were shot down and ran into the Laotians folks, you'd probably get your head whacked off with a machete. So my intent was, if I'm in a Brady hole and they stick their face in there, I'm gonna put a hole about that big up the backside of their head. And anybody that comes running towards it, I'm gonna chuck some grenade at. Hopefully it'll last long enough so I can get a SAR and pass out of it. Well, as I come down in the chute, I landed right in the corner of a rice paddy, and coming up each dike are about 12 North Vietnamese regulars. And the guy coming up on the left has got his 9 out, and he's planking right at my feet. So I grab these grenades on my chest, and I look up over my shoulder and I say, "Dude, what do you think? Should I pull the pins on these things, chuck them out there and see how many we can take out? Or should discretion be the better part of valor? Take my hands off those grenades." Just slip my hands. Duke looked down and he told me, he said, "Short finger, discretion is the better part of valor. Live to fight another day." So, in fact, I did. I took my hands off the grenades and lifted my hands up and was captured. Duke was 2 guys in front of me when we went through the line there at the White House. So I grabbed him and I said, "Sir, tell you a story. And I tell him the story about how I was talking to him. And he looks down at me. He's taller than I am. He's down right here. And he said, you know, Shortfinger, you were right. Discretion was the better part of valor. And you have lived to fight another day. Thank you for your service. Okay, next slide. I think that's better. Okay, never forget, because we still got lots of guys who are still listed as missing. I wear a bracelet. Those are available. If you want to, you can go to the National League of Families, pick a name, find the name, just give the name. Those families still have not had closure on their loved ones. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, I've talked really long, but I've got 2 DVDs that I want you to see, okay? So if you can hang loose for maybe 15 minutes max, I think you'll like this. The first one will be all right. The second one is kick-ass, okay? And for the Griffins, when you see something on that second video, I expect to hear something from you guys, okay? I ain't gonna tell you what it is, but if it's an ethnic team, you better be squealing like a pig. That's what it's all about right there, okay? I'm kicking ass, taking advantage. Thank you. Any other questions? I know we've been here way too long and it's hotter than elevator.
Did you come across Lance St. John? Lance St. John?
No, sorry.
Sorry, I said it wrong.
Lance Sidon?
Yes.
Sidon, yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he had passed before I got.
Okay.
True American hero.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes, go back.
Yes, sir. Senior Master Sergeant Wales, Operation Crew. I got 2 things for you. One, I'm an intel guy. On behalf of all the intel guys, I'm sorry for that shit. Second, have you been back, do any visits back to Vietnam at all?
No, and I won't. There have been a lot of the guys go back. They've actually even gone to the Hanoi Hilton, to the cells that they were in. Saw the names that they had scratched in. I just don't have a desire. Some guys went back to talk to the MiG pilot that shot them down. And there was a good discussion back and forth. But again, that's not my bailiwick. Other questions? No?
Where are you from, sir?
Well, the first video was Advance, so that's Oklahoma. I call that God's country. Because we're country boys, wheat farmers, stuff, serve our nation. And maybe a $5 or two. Robbie was from Oklahoma. But I now live in Missouri, west of Branson, right on Table Rock Lake. A little town called Show Now, but it's kick-ass retirement type of thing. Yeah. Go ahead. Back? Nope. Yeah. Anybody? I'm sorry that I have a tendency to just get wound up tighter than the clock. Can't quit talking. I'm sorry.
Now, does anybody, I know Shortfinger would be happy to stick around afterwards, after this is done. And so you have some questions, and you just kind of been saying them. We're going to linger up front, and feel free to join us and ask them anything you like. Shortfinger, if you would join me. Just want to thank you on behalf of all the airmen of the 144th Firemen. Thank you, sir. So grateful for you, for your service, for the example that you give us and the inspiration to all of us. So thank you very much, sir. Perfect. That concludes the formal portion. Everybody have a great rest of your day.